There's a stage beyond growth, beyond stability, where everything you've built starts to feel quiet. Not inactive, not stagnant, but controlled. Like a system that no longer needs constant correction. And in that silence, a new realization begins to form. Success isn't loud. It doesn't always look like viral spikes or explosive numbers. Sometimes it looks like consistency that no longer surprises you. And that's when you understand. You've moved from chasing outcomes to owning the process. But ownership brings a different kind of responsibility. Because now, the results you get aren't accidental anymore. They're a reflection of your decisions, your standards, your discipline. And that means every dip, every plateau, every slowdown, it points back to you. Not as failure, but as feedback. And the ability to accept that without hesitation. That's what keeps you evolving. At this level, refinement becomes almost obsessive. Not in a chaotic way, but in a focused, deliberate way. You begin noticing details that once felt invisible. The slight pause in pacing that weakens tension. The extra second that causes a viewer to drop off. The subtle difference between a good title and a compelling one. And these details, they don't seem significant individually. But together, they define performance. Because at scale, success isn't built on big improvements anymore. It's built on precision, micro adjustments that shift your content from good to exceptional. And this is where your skill deepens. Where you stop thinking in general terms and start operating with accuracy. Now here's where your mindset transforms again. Because you're no longer trying to prove that you can succeed. You already have. Now, you're trying to understand how to sustain that success indefinitely. And that requires a different level of thinking. One that goes beyond tactics and into principles. Principles that don't change when trends change. Principles that hold even when the platform evolves. Things like clarity, value, attention, trust. And once you build your system around these, it becomes adaptable by design. Because trends come and go, formats rise and fall, but attention, how it works, how it moves, that remains consistent. And understanding that gives you stability in an unstable environment. Now imagine this moment. You're no longer worried about whether your next video will perform. You're confident that over time, your system will deliver results. And that confidence doesn't come from luck. It comes from repetition. From patterns you've seen again and again. From knowing that even if something underperforms, it's temporary. Because your system corrects itself, adapts, improves. And that self-correcting ability is what makes it powerful. But even with all this control, one thing remains critical. Curiosity. Because the moment you stop being curious, you stop evolving. And the moment you stop evolving, your system begins to age. So you keep exploring new ideas, new formats, new angles. Not because you need to, but because staying ahead requires movement. And movement requires curiosity. Now let's go deeper. Because at this stage, your understanding of value becomes sharper. You realize that value isn't just information. It's delivery. It's how that information is presented, how it feels, how it holds attention. And once you focus on that, your content becomes more impactful. Not just watched, but remembered. And being remembered, that's what builds long-term strength. Because attention is temporary, but impact lingers. And channels that create impact don't just grow, they last. Now here's where another shift happens. You begin thinking less like a creator and more like a builder of systems that create outcomes. Because the videos are just the surface. The real work happens underneath. In the structure, in the strategy, in the decisions that shape everything. And once you see that clearly, you stop focusing on individual results and start focusing on the system as a whole. Because if the system is strong, the results follow consistently, predictably, sustainably. Now step back again. From the beginning to now. From uncertainty to clarity. From effort to structure. From chasing to controlling. And you realize this journey wasn't about becoming a YouTuber. It was about learning how to build something that works. Something that grows without constant visibility. Something that adapts without breaking. Something that continues even when you step back. And that realization changes everything. Because now, you're not limited to one system. You can build again, refine again, scale again, in different niches, different formats, different platforms, because the skill isn't tied to the channel, it's tied to you, to how you think, how you analyze, how you build, and that skill is what makes this sustainable, not just for now, but for whatever comes next. Because in the end, the real success isn't the channel. It's the ability to create systems that continue to succeed, no matter where you apply them.